Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, discussing all the latest in Philadelphia sports.
And what a wild week it was in Wild Card Weekend, living up to the title, if you will. I must not know anything. I went 1-3 in my picks, which is unusual because, as I recall last year, I went 10-1 overall in the playoffs. The Philadelphia Eagles will be facing the Atlanta Falcons, the 6th seed. And I came on this show last week really with not much of a glimmer of hope that the Eagles will be able to make any moves in this playoff bracket in the NFC and get anywhere. And I still have much reservations about the Eagles taking on the Atlanta Falcons, nevertheless, but I'm conflicted. I don't know who's going to win this game, to be honest with you, as the Falcons have now been playing big game after big game for the last several weeks. And meanwhile, the Eagles have had extra time to look at the teams that they could possibly be playing and foster a game plan to make up for the deficiencies at quarterback and get this defense prepared to perhaps pull off a win at Lincoln Financial Field.
And now, here's Tyler Werner.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, and finally it is just about a couple of days away. The Eagles hosting the Atlanta Falcons, and my oh my, it's the divisional round, the kickoff to the divisional round of the 2017 NFL playoffs. As the Eagles coming out of their bye week, and I'm surprised that it was the Falcons that the Eagles are going to end up playing. I was pretty comfortable with my pick in the LA Rams defeating the Atlanta Falcons, with Atlanta having to go east to west coast and take on a Rams team that I thought was pretty solid across the board. You know, great running game, solid defense. Jared Goff, the growth that he's shown this past year, and definitely being at least considered an MVP talk conversation. Not that he was one of the favorites, but Rams looking like they were putting together a decent campaign, and the Atlanta Falcons had something to say about that. And by default, that pits them against the Philadelphia Eagles. And initially, as I was saying last week, I've been having these reservations about the Philadelphia Eagles increasingly over the last several weeks since Carson Wentz has been down. I mean, yeah, you want to sell me on that Giants game, whatever. The Giants trying to spoil the Eagles' chances of home field advantage or whatever before Christmas. All right, whatever. Nick Foles had a decent game. Defense wasn't quite on their game. Then Christmas night, the Raiders and Nick Foles really doesn't look good. And if it wasn't for the defense playing the way they did against an Oakland Raiders team that was dead at that point and eliminated from the playoff race, Eagles would have lost a silly game that they shouldn't have lost there. At home on Christmas night to clinch home field advantage. But they won it. And then, albeit in a small sample size of one quarter, Nick Foles really doesn't look good. Again, in the first quarter of that Cowboys game, the Eagles, they just had no offense whatsoever. A lot of backups out. You know, it is what it is. Jay Ajayi was getting rested. Fine. You want to write it off? I mean, it was a bit concerning that the offense wasn't able to do anything that game. But I guess at the end of the day, that game was water under the bridge. For the most part, a chance to get guys out there for just a little bit. Just so there's not too much rust to shed off. Rust to shed off when they come in this divisional round game and host now the Atlanta Falcons. My initial take with the Philadelphia Eagles, as I've been saying, is that they might be the weakest team in the NFC. in the playoffs, given Nick Foles at quarterback. And I'm sorry, that's not...
That pisses me off.
I don't mean to knock on Nick Foles, but that's just the reality. Without Carson Wentz, a strong candidate for MVP this season, without him, that playbook, it really shrinks. It really does. However, I may have somewhat have turned a corner this week. My initial instincts were Saturday night. I'm seeing some of this. I'm seeing the end of this game. And I'm like, all right, Rams, here you go. Get your act. Because I decided to enter this little football poll with some people I know, the playoff poll, and I never normally do. And it's like, of course, this year I decide to enter, and I totally screw up the first round and go 1-3.
Loser! You're a loser!
Yeah, whereas last year, I believe I'm on record in digging into the podcast, unless I'm mistaken. I believe I went 10-1 last year throughout the playoffs. Now, if I turn in a 10-1 record picking playoff games in this poll, there's a strong chance I might win it. If my total points in the Super Bowl tiebreaker is better than anybody else that had 10 wins. This year, I already got 3 freaking losses. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable.
Are you kidding me?
So, might as well, call it a day on that. But I'm watching this Rams team fall apart against this Atlanta team on Saturday. I'm thinking, oh man, maybe it's the Rams. They just weren't ready for the moment. I don't know. That's how it is. It can, in the NFL playoffs, it can just fall apart in one night. And if they're not ready for the moment, like they maybe were not against this Atlanta team, that okay, they went to the Super Bowl last year. They got they got that experience. Matt Ryan, very good quarterback. They got weapons, and to my surprise, the Atlanta defense holding the Rams to 13 points in their own building, mind you. That's maybe more impressive about that game. So I'm watching I'm like, how is this, like, this Rams team looks like a shell of itself. And I'm thinking after this, oh man, this Atlanta team's for real. They bring it against this Philadelphia Eagles team. Like, geez. That's who the Eagles are going to face. And the Atlanta Falcons are looking pretty good. But I don't think this usually happens. But I've turned a corner over the last several days. There's been like this progression. Initially, my first instincts are, well, the Eagles, they just don't have it. Nick Foles, they're not going to have enough. However, I am now leaning Philadelphia Eagles by a sliver. Because I came in the show, I just wasn't, I don't know what's going to happen. This game could play out in a multitude of ways. And if the Philadelphia Eagles fall behind early, it spells trouble. Because Nick Foles is not, I don't have any faith that he's going to be able to dig you out of, say, a 10-point hole or something. Whereas Carson Wentz, I had that belief that he'd be able to do that, if need be. Or I have more faith, at least, that he'd be capable of doing that. Don't have that same confidence with Nick Foles. I don't know who does. But
What the hell?
and no, I don't with Nate Sudfeld either. Maybe he was 19 for 24. Whatever. They didn't get a point in that game against the Cowboys. That's the bottom line. Yeah, maybe he showed some mobility, but come on, unless Nick Foles really stinks it up in the beginning of the game, I'm not going to see Nate Sudfeld unless they just end up absolutely desperate, and it's like, all right, Nick Foles is just stinking it up out there. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I have turned this corner, in a sense, because I think back to the fact that, the Falcons, they just went out to Los Angeles and they beat the Rams. Impressive. However, then it kind of occurred to me that, well, you know what? This Philadelphia Eagles team, this coaching staff, that's the key. This coaching staff is on the griddle, in a sense, for me this game. I am expecting, for instance, Coach Jim Schwartz to really step it up here. And foster a game plan with this extra time to look at the Carolina Panthers, to look at the New Orleans Saints, to look at the Atlanta Falcons. All three of which were the possible three teams that the Eagles would be hosting. They've had this extra time to not only rest the players on defense and offense, to not only find things they can do, but expose the weaknesses or foster a game plan to, I guess, dominate, if you will. I have my reservations about this secondary trying to cover Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu. The running defense has been solid throughout the season. It's been fairly reliable. So my hopes are that they can contain Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, those guys pretty well. The real test is going to be in the secondary, I think. And if Fletcher Cox is going to live up to that $100 million, this front seven can kind of return to their roots a little bit. They haven't been quite as menacing, if you will, in recent weeks down the stretch here in the month of in what was the month of December. But I think Jim Schwartz, this is your moment. And I don't want to see it. Look, I know he's been considered as a candidate for the Giants head coaching staff. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I'd love to see Jim Schwartz remain defensive coordinator here, but he may not be after the season he's had.
Yes.
We're gonna pick
yes, Jim. I love it, man.
But for this game's sake, with this extra time, I gotta trust. I gotta believe. Jim Schwartz, this defense has been cooking something up. And that they're going to figure out a way in front of a rabid Philadelphia fan base at Lincoln Financial Field, home field advantage here, to keep the Falcons under 20 points. I think that's a big key of the game. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, when we take a look at Doug Peterson,
I just felt comfortable, confident and comfortable.
and of course we'll listen to the entire Doug Peterson press conference from yesterday, as we are just a couple of days away from the big game against the Atlanta Falcons. But Doug Peterson, this is your moment. All right? It's unfortunate. Carson Wentz not at your disposal. Very unfortunate. Without question, Carson Wentz, to be fair, he made it easier for Doug Peterson to to call the offense, to coach this team. It all starts with the quarterback. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, right out of the gate, the playbook is probably a lot thinner with Nick Foles for obvious skill set reasons. Differences between Carson Wentz and Nick Foles at this juncture. But, again, you've had extra time, plenty of time, in recent weeks to practice, to work with Nick Foles. I'm not saying you're going to, spruce him up with some fairy dust and he's going to have this incredible lights out good game and he's going to be throwing incredible deep balls. No, none of that. None of that. But as far as the running game goes, this, I guess three-headed monster, if you will, and maybe utilizing the hurry-up offense, just finding ways to get something out of Nick Foles. Get what you can out of Nick Foles. The goal here of this game, as we've continued to say, defense takes care of business, and you pound the ball. You pound Jay Ajayi down. You haven't really used Jay Ajayi to an extent this season where like he'd be, ground down or whatever. It's not like he's had any games where he's had more than 20 carries, where he might be worn down. So now's your time. Let him loose. Provided you keep the running game going. And then you change up with the Garrett Blunt, change up with Corey Clement. And you wear down the Falcons' defense. You control the game. And then maybe that sets up a little bit of play action with Nick Foles to maybe make some plays. Maybe that sets up play action a little bit. Nick Foles, maybe he gets a little bit settled. He gets comfortable. Or comfortable, as Doug Peterson once said this season.
I just felt comfortable, confident and comfortable.
Confident and comfortable. I love that. I don't even think he knew he was going to invent like a word there, but he kind of did. I never heard it until I heard Doug Peterson say that.
I just felt comfortable, confident and comfortable.
It's like comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, confident and comfortable. Like the light bulb just went off. But that's what you want to do. You want to get Nick Foles comfortable. If you're able to do that, good things will happen. And again, there's extra time you've had to do this. This is your chance. I'm not asking then for this Eagles team to go on and then win the NFC Championship game and then go to the Super. I'm not asking that because that's reaching at this point. You don't have Carson Wentz out there. So there'd be no shame in that. But I think to get this divisional round victory against a Falcons team that's been, a little up and down, I think it's totally reasonable to expect. And another factor I look at, this Falcons team has been playing tough game after tough game after tough game in the latter part of this season. Just to cycle back a little bit. They just went to the Rams and beat them 20. Yeah, good win. So they fly back home, and then they got to fly up here to Philly. Another road game. Now before that, Week 17, they hosted the Carolina Panthers. They needed that win. They got it. The week before that, they were on the road against the New Orleans Saints, lost to the Saints. Another tough game. The week before that, they barely pulled one out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 24-21. Buccaneers who were, sputtering at that, but I guess a divisional game nevertheless. The week before that, they hosted New Orleans Saints. Tough game. Came out on top 20-17, but that's a tough game. The week before that, Minnesota Vikings came to town to Atlanta. Tough game. They lost 14-9. The week before that, they hosted the Buccaneers. Division game, I guess maybe not. But the week before that, they went up to Seattle and they pulled one out. 34-31. This is dating back to November 20th, right before Thanksgiving. So since Thanksgiving, that is almost week after week, tough game after tough game after tough game. Division games. Games against the likes of the Minnesota Vikings. The Seahawks, who at the time were still, I guess, viable. They were they were kind of, I don't know, they were fighting, battling for a playoff spot. Never came to fruition. Week after week here. And you know what? This is where it ends. That's my thinking here. And they just came off this great win against them. Maybe they're smelling themselves a little bit. I don't know. While the Eagles, they get shut out on New Year's Eve. Christmas, the offense doesn't look too good. Against the Giants, it's like, what the hell was that? This team has been getting called out. Oh, they're not the same. They don't have a chance. Well, you know what? Chance for the Eagles. No, we do have a chance. We're going to go win this game. We're going to prove people wrong. We're not done. Even if we don't have our starting quarterback, our MVP caliber quarterback, Carson Wentz, out there. That's how it's... Yeah, that's where the thinking's got to be.
I agree.
That's where the mindset has to be. You got rest, yada yada, bada boom, XYZ. Falcons have played tough game after tough game after tough game. You've had extra time to prepare schematically on offense and defense. You can utilize Alshon Jeffrey, utilize Zach Ertz. You can. This is a winnable game, and I think it'll be disappointing now if the Eagles don't get it done. If Jim Schwartz, Doug Peterson don't rise to the occasion. If they come out unprepared, it's going to be disappointing, and you'll hear it on the Tyler Werner Show next week. Coming back on the other side, we will take a listen into Doug Peterson's Tuesday press conference. Let's listen to some of it. Are little, pretty quick, straightforward answers. I'll get back to you on it later. A lot of those in the press conference. And then later on in the show, I'll attempt to pick the divisional round play. Now, I think this week should turn out a little easier and a little more predictable than Wild Card Weekend did for me, which was an absolute wash at 1-3. Who else out there? Anybody out there actually pick all 4 games correct? Because there were definitely a couple of upsets. That's for darn sure.
Just sharp guy.
And we know one of them. We know which one of the major upsets.
You have some water?
Who was kind of guilty of that.
It was like sweet and sour pork, right?
It's the Tyler Werner Show. We'll be back with more right after this.
The champion of game day catering is the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
We prepare our balls over time.
And that's the essence of the preparation.
On top of that, another trademark of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs is Brady's signature rubbing process.
When I pick balls out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect. What is a concern is the texture of the balls, and again, that's the point that Tom hit on hard.
The champion of all game day catering dishes is Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show.
It's no big news flash that many people, you included, eat as a way to medicate themselves. You can choose to worry about it or not. You can choose to panic about your situation or not. It's clear what you must do in order to make important changes.
5 letters here. RELAX. Relax. We're going to be okay.
In order for you ever to effectively figure out and map how to get to where you want to go, you have to first know exactly where you are starting.
RELAX. Relax.
You have to be willing to change what you're doing. You can change your behavior.
Tyler Werner Show. We would come right back at you with some more. Just a moment, we'll get to this Doug Peterson press conference. How about them Sixers? They're back in action. I mean, yeah, they've had off since Friday, so yeah, how about that? But coming off of 4 wins in a row, they got a tough test here. They're going to take on the Boston Celtics. Oh, kind of a wacky 3 p.m. time for Thursday, but that's nevertheless big game, big test for the Sixers coming off of 4 straight wins, most recently on Friday night with the Detroit Pistons, or Detroit, however you want to say it. And the Flyers, of course, Flyers schedule. Next contest with them, they got the Devils coming up on Saturday. Another kind of a lapse here between games. I mean, they beat the Sabres 4-1, which you would think they would anyways. Saturday, they beat the Blues 6-3, of course. And on Thursday before that, 6-4 against the Islanders. So the Flyers have had some offense going the last 3 games. Hopefully that carries over against the New Jersey Devils. Flyers pick up a few straight wins. So, good stuff we're seeing out of the Flyers and the Sixers in the last week or so. Will the Eagles maybe continue that trend? We will see. I swung. I don't know what it's like. An epiphany's hitting me. I don't know. It's not one of these things where it's going to be the end of the world if they lose. All right? At least to me. Because, again, when Carson Wentz went down, I knew this team, it was only going to go so far. Whereas if Carson Wentz did not tear his ACL and he was suiting up on Saturday against the Atlanta, then boom. Convincing win over the Falcons. But it's a different ball game. That's the reality that I accepted unwillingly, but I nevertheless had to bite the bullet and accept it. But that's not to say that this Eagles team, with this extra time to prepare at home against a Falcons team, is coming off a big win, a big high, and has played kind of going through a buzzsaw here of a schedule in the last better part of 2 months. Whereas the Eagles, I mean, it's like, they've had non-competitive. I mean, well, I don't know. I guess technically speaking, the games against the Giants and the Raiders and the Cowboys, from a scoring standpoint, were competitive. But they haven't been, they weren't games like they were against the Rams or, other tough opponents, like the Panthers earlier on in the season, and the Seahawks when the Eagles lost after 9 straight victories. They haven't had anything like that. So this Eagles team, they should be fresh. They should be prepared. And again, that hinges on Doug Peterson.
Trust the process.
I'm trusting that Doug Peterson is going to have this team prepared, game plan wise. That Jim Schwartz has had a great campaign here as defensive coordinator overall this season. That he's gonna fight, he's gonna expose the Falcons. That's what I gotta trust. I don't know who else. I don't know who else out there is reserve. I don't know if anybody else right out of the chute thought, well, the Eagles will beat the Falcons, or if they're like me, if they thought initially, well, we know the Eagles' weaknesses, we know their deficiencies. Falcons might not be able to get it done against the Falcons. Well, later on in the week, turned a corner. How about you? All right. So, without further ado, let's take a listen in. Doug Peterson, what he had to say as the Eagles prepare to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Here's Doug Peterson from Tuesday's press conference.
What's your message to Nick this week?
My message to Nick or the team? Message to Nick is, listen, we got a great opportunity. Let's go be Nick. Let's go play. Let's go execute the offense. To the team, same thing. Got a great opportunity. Backs against the wall. Let's come out swinging and, see what happens.
Doug, do you expect everyone to practice today?
Well, you know what? I'm going to have an injury report at the end of the day. I'll let you know.
How's Brandon Graham doing?
Brandon Graham's doing fine.
Practice today?
I'll let you know at the end of the day.
Doug, what's the plan for Sidney Jones moving forward here?
Keep working every day.
Do you see a role for him on Saturday?
We'll work today and we'll see what happens.
You mentioned back against the wall. Frank mentioned Nick needs to stay aggressive yesterday. Do you think there's a confidence issue? Is that what you're...
No, I don't think there's a confidence issue, no.
Doug, you regard Andy Reid as a friend and mentor. Did you talk to him at all after, his loss this past weekend? Get a sense of...
No, I was focused on a couple of teams this weekend, so I didn't talk to him.
Is there anything, I know you've learned from him, shared coaching ideas, is there anything you can take away from the number of abrupt exits? It seems that the success that he has in the regular season doesn't necessarily all translate to the playoffs. Is there anything you can take away from that?
I was focused on the Falcons, man. I don't get into that, honestly.
Okay, Falcons defense.
Thank you. Yeah, we play a game this week. Thank you.
Over the last 6 games, they're only giving up like 16 points a game. What are you seeing about how well they're playing and why they're playing so well?
I tell you, this defense is it's much improved over the course of the season. They're fast. You saw it the other day against the Rams. They're fast. They're flying to the football. Secondary is aggressive. Guys know how to cover a lot of single high. They're going to challenge our receivers, and that's what you're seeing on tape. And it's a quality defense, but that's what we expect this time of year.
Doug, you guys gained over 200 yards on the ground last year against them. You had 38 to 21 advantage in time of possession. Is that the recipe that you have to kind of duplicate this week against that defense?
Well, I'm not going to, obviously give you my game plan today, but that worked for us last year, obviously, but a different year, different set of circumstances. And, is it something to build off of? Yeah, we can look at it and learn from it. Yeah, for sure.
What are the advantages and disadvantages when you play a defense that plays the same types of coverages and doesn't switch things up a lot, but is still good at that?
Well, you know where they're going to be, and that's the thing with this defense. They line up and they're going to show you exactly. They want. I mean, that's where they play. They play with a lot of confidence. It's an aggressive style, fast flow, and they're not going to pull any punches. I mean, they're not going to try to trick you or do anything, to get in your head or anything like that. It's just line up and try to beat us.
Jim Schwartz talked yesterday about that sense of urgency now that the playoffs are here. Is that a message you have to give to the younger guys, or do you let the veterans kind of talk about their experiences?
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. I do. It's part of the ownership theme that I've talked about with the team all season, and putting it back on the players. And the players can. We've got a veteran team, and a lot of guys have been in the postseason. A lot of guys have been to the Super Bowl, and so they can really wrap and embrace the younger guys and bring them along. Sure.
How do you think the week off has kind of helped Jai and LeGarrette Blount as far as getting rested and getting ready to carry the load, going into the game on Saturday? I mean, do you think that's kind of been a big benefit, and is that something you can rely on them?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to have to rely on them, obviously. But having a week to rest a lot of players is very beneficial. But at the same time, you want to maintain your intensity, and that's why we practiced last week and try to keep everybody into the moment as possible.
Your first playoff game as head coach, Doug. What are you kind of leaning on as you get ready for this?
A lot of it's just past experience as a player. Even my time, as an assistant coach, being in the postseason, just leaning on those times, leaning on the guys. I mean, to be where we're at and to have a home playoff game and feed off the fans, the crowd, which is going to be electric on Saturday afternoon. And just, again, stay in the moment, do the things that got us to where we are today. And that's kind of been my mindset, the last couple of weeks.
Specifically on that last postseason with the Chiefs, when you were starting to call more play? No.
I think we played the Patriots, so it's a different.
Well, you won the first round game, and then you lost to the Patriots the second round.
You have a lot of young players who haven't been in the playoffs before. You have a lot of young players who haven't been in the playoffs before. Do you wonder how they'll handle the pressure of being in that moment?
Oh yeah, you always wonder. Do you wonder? Yeah. I mean, there's gonna be wonder. But I'm gonna tell you, listen, these guys are football players. I mean, and I think sometimes the outside, whether it be the media, the fan, can make it bigger than it really is. When you boil it down, it's football at the end of the day. It's football at the end of the day. Just go do your job. Do what you've been coached to do all week long, and give it your best effort on Saturday. If it's good enough, great. If it's not, then we focus on next season. But it's football. These guys are football players. They're gonna be coached up and ready to go.
On Saturday night, when you find out you're playing the Falcons, what was the first thing that went through your head this past Saturday?
Got to get ready for the Falcons. Well, I thought, you watch that game and you're like going, good football team. I mean, this is go on the road to that stadium against a great defense, a great offense, and to pretty much, stymie that team. It's pretty impressive, and it's we definitely had and have our work cut out for us this week.
Do you guys, are you handicapped at all being indoors for practice a lot? Do you anticipate going to Lincoln all this week, or?
No, the weather's gonna be mild. It's 40 degrees. It's gonna be 50 during the week, but
Do you anticipate getting outside?
I'm gonna try to get over there later in the week if I can. Yeah.
Doug, with the cover three that they run, their base basically zone. There are holes down the field to throw. Is it going to be important for Nick to take those shots when given the opportunity?
Sure. It's playing quarterback. Opportunity's there. Rip it. If it's not, check it down. It's been the mindset all season long, and we're not going to change it now.
So getting back to what you guys do and
doing that well. The defensive line has been the key to the success of the defense all year. Now that those guys are getting healthy, how important are those guys in this game?
I mean, it's big. You know, the energy level obviously ramps up a little bit. You know, I think what you're seeing even in the wild card weekend is the line of scrimmage, control the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. And you know, our defensive line is no different. We got to make sure that this is a two-headed monster offensively. You know, with this running game that they have, and we've got to be able to control that and sort of slow that down the best we can. And a lot of that falls on the defensive line.
Doug, not just from them to blitz Nick early, Doug, and how important is staying in third and manageable is going to be toward that end?
Well, you know, this team's not a big blitz team. I mean, again, they're just going to line up and play. They're going to, you know, we're going to see a lot of the same. They're going to rush 5 guys. They'll bring 1 extra. You know, rush 5 quite a bit. But you know, our goal. I mean, our key. One of the keys actually is we got to do better on first down. These last couple of weeks, whether we're running the ball or throwing the ball, we haven't done enough on first and second down, and we've kept ourselves in third and longs, and we can't do that. Not against, you know, good defenses, and we haven't done that all season. So we got to make sure we're doing our business on early downs to stay ahead of the chains.
Are the Chargers probably the best comp for the type of team you're about to face, not just scheme but also personnel?
It's very similar. You know, when the Seahawks are healthy, it's very similar. Defensive, you know, scheme. So we feel like, you know, we've kind of played this defense a little bit already this season. But at the same time, I mean, different set of challenges. I mean, these guys are healthy and they're playing good. But having played this scheme already, you know, guys are familiar with it. Yes.
Where do you feel like the run defense is right now? The numbers weren't as good kind of the last month. Was that a product of who you were facing, some pretty good backs, or do you think they wore down a little?
Well, I think it's a combination of that, and I think it's a combination of you know, the last game of the year too. We rested some starters in that game, and it's just, you know, the numbers are going to fluctuate a little bit, you know, offensively, defensively. So our defense will be up for the challenge this week. Again, you know, 2 really good running backs that we have to sort of slow down.
I've worked with Matt maybe for a number of years, both here and with the Chiefs. What's your thoughts about him getting the head coaching job with the Bears?
I mean, I wished him congratulations, obviously, yesterday, and it's a great opportunity for him. It's great for the Chicago Bears, and I'm excited to watch his career take off. Thanks, guys.
So there was Coach Doug Peterson on Tuesday, and the spotlight's going to be on him. That's how I look at it. You know, this is his. You know, I'm not asking him to turn water into wine here with Nick Foles, but foster a game plan where you move the football. You don't have to rely on Nick Foles to having to throw deep or whatever, but you pound the football with the run if you can, as much as you can. Maybe set up play action. You go from there. You make things easier for Nick Foles. That's the bottom line. And hopefully the defense should take care of business. And that's the formula. Really. That's how I see it. It's on Doug Peterson. This is his chance to shine. And whether he does or not, I mean, remains to be seen.
Apples wide. Keep chopping the wood.
Chop the wood with the run game. And I believe that this is one of these things. If they go out pass happy or something, and it'll show. And be sure to be some ripping next week. If the Eagles lose and the play calling is so one-sided. We'll come back on the other side. I got to, again, pick round 2 of the playoffs, the divisional round. And we'll close things down then, not long after that, on the Tyler Werner Show. It is divisional week coming up this weekend, the divisional weekend edition, I guess if you will, of the Tyler Werner Show. We'll be back with more after this.
Hi there, I'm Hank Hill. Well, I'd like to tell you what Strickland can do to meet your energy needs. You see, at Strickland, the customer comes first. It's kind of interesting, the word customer begins with CU. Well, we don't see you as just another sale, but as a member of our team. I thought you might enjoy 7.5 gallons of pure premium propane. Strickland Propane, the customer comes first.
Attention parents. Is your under 18-year-old daughter being cyberstalked by a man who identifies themselves as a grown adult male?
I want to meet you and fool around. Are you up to meeting tonight, hon? I think I would like to shower with you. We can do it in the shower, too.
If so, you need to contact Chris Hansen and Company to bust these online cyberstalkers.
How are you tonight? Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that? I guess you're going to tell me next that this is the very first time you've done something like this.
Chris Hansen and the Dateline crew will take care of it. Contact us, and we will put an end to the cyber stalking that your daughter is experiencing.
Well, there's something you got to know. I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
Busted!
And we're back on the Tyler Werner Show, getting down to the nitty-gritty here, getting ready to close things out shortly. We are looking forward to an Eagles playoff game after a few years without playoffs here. And albeit it's without Carson Wentz at quarterback, which has been inevitable since the ACL tear following the Rams game, but nevertheless, it's playoff football. And I'm going to hope that this Eagles team brings their A game after extra rest, extra time to prepare, and against the Atlanta Falcons team that's really had to grind it out in recent weeks. So I'll just, as I get into my picks here, I'm gonna lock it down right now. At this juncture, lock it down. Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm gonna say this is, I'm gonna say, I guess 20-17. I think this Eagles team, they're going to be able to run the ball. I think, again, it's going to be tough covering Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu. It's going to be tough for the second, but the Eagles are going to do enough on defense to hold the Falcons into 20 points. They may make a play. They may get a defensive touchdown. But they're going to pull it out 20-17. Something like that. That's my thought. Let's go up then to the Minnesota Vikings hosting the New Orleans Saints. I'm looking here. So I got this paper bracket, that I filled out, and it's totally screwed up now because of a 1-3 wild card week. But nevertheless, Minnesota Vikings host New Orleans Saints. And this is actually on my football poll here, bracket. This is what I had being the NFC Championship game. As I had the New Orleans Saints going to Philadelphia because the LA Rams, the 3 seed, I had beating the Falcons and then taking on the Minnesota Vikings. But that didn't happen. So I have the Minnesota Vikings. I guess this game against New Orleans Saints is just going to happen a week earlier than I thought it would. I have the Minnesota Vikings defeating the New Orleans Saints. This Minnesota defense, again, is kind of scary good, I guess you could say. The only game they've really lost in recent weeks, again, was that Carolina Panthers game where it was the 3rd straight road game for the Minnesota Vikings against a a Carolina team that was desperate at that juncture. Probably. So, I take Minnesota. Again, home field. We got the extra rest. New Orleans, they've had some tougher games as of late as well. Against division opponents, mind you. So, I take Minnesota. Case Keenum will do what he does to take care of business. He's had a good season. Basically, as the starter for almost the entire season. So then we go over to the AFC, and again, last week I had Buffalo upsetting Jacksonville, I guess. Maybe they would have had a better chance if Shady McCoy wasn't banged up. He wasn't quite his usual self, I guess. But nevertheless, I thought Buffalo was going to pull it out against a Jacksonville team that kind of whimpered in the playoffs. A couple of weak games to end the regular season. Whereas Buffalo, it looked like they were, they were a little determined to do something on the road in Jacksonville, but they didn't. So Jacksonville moved on. They will take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh, with the week off, better overall team, they're going to hand Jacksonville a loss here. I don't think that sounds too extreme or anything. So Pittsburgh beats Jacksonville, I think, sort of handedly. And then the New England Patriots, one more time, host the Buffalo Bills, take on the Buffalo Bills, and defeat the Buffalo Bills. Wait a minute, no, they're not playing. Wait a second. I'm looking here at this paper that's all screwed up. At least that's what I thought it was going to be. I must have lost my mind. My bad. And no, I haven't any alcoholic beverages either or anything. No. They're hosting the Tennessee Titans. Another game I had wrong, which many of us had wrong, because I don't know who had the Tennessee Titans beating the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid, I guess you have some explaining to do. That's
people.
Albeit,
so
it kind of required a Marcus Mariota pass to himself, a miraculous play, and the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, kind of just at his best or at his worst, depending how you want to look at it, and furthering away a game that they basically had in the bag against the Tennessee Titans. Kansas City, again, what happened? They started out great, looking like favorites in the AFC. Big Red might return to the Super Bowl. Then they had this midseason slump where it looked like they may not even make the playoffs. And then latter part of the season, they turn it on again. And then they just totally blow it against the Tennessee Titans. I don't know. But it's going to be the Tennessee Titans that take on the Buffalo... that take on the New England Patriots and not the Buffalo Bills. You know what? I ought to just crumble up and throw away this bracket. I know who I put down anyways. And I know my bracket's pretty much shot at this point. So I may as well just trash it at this point. I just had it in front of me, I guess, as a reference sheet. Just to kind of point out who I picked here and there last week, and I wish I was wrong. But no, it gets... See, that's the thing, too. It's all screwed up. Let me kind of uncrumble this here. Because the thing, game by game, it's different pick. But that's not how this thing works. You're right. You fill out every game before the playoffs start. And see, the problem with this is, for me anyway, is that the Atlanta Falcons winning totally screwed things up. Because I had Philadelphia taking on the New Orleans in the divisional round, with New Orleans beating the Eagles. And, of course, I had the LA Rams at Minnesota, the divisional round, with Minnesota moving on. So I had Minnesota, New Orleans in the conference championship game. So no matter what, one of those teams, both of them aren't going to be in the NFC championship game. So that's the way this works. It's not really picking it's picking who's going to move on. But one game gets screwed up, like the Falcons. The Rams blowing it. Then before you know it, you're due to have another one get screwed up. Like this Minnesota-New Orleans thing. They both can't be in the NFC Championship game. So you got that. And basically it wouldn't matter whether the Philadelphia Eagles or the Falcons win. Because I didn't have either of them in the NFC Championship game, as I originally plotted. So, but given I think the Falcons are inferior to the New Orleans Saints, given the circumstances as well with the Eagles, I think the Eagles win this game. But that's totally irrelevant to the way this bracket works. Of course, in the AFC then, all right, I had Buffalo moving on. I screwed that up. And I had Kansas City moving on. Well, that was screwed up as well. But I did have, as I'm sure many of us did, I had Pittsburgh and New England in the AFC Championship game. So, barring another screw up, barring an upset in one of those games, let alone both of those games, I at least may have those two right. I guess, should I look at the bright side here? Maybe I have those two right. And then, hey, either way, Minnesota or New Orleans, one of them's... So, hey, I might have 3 of the 4 teams moving on that I had in this bracket. But at the end of the day, there's like several dozen people in this pool. So, as far as I'm concerned, looks like I'm pretty much out. I don't have a chance to win the few $100 grand prize or second or third place runner-up prizes. I don't think at all I stand a chance. So that's where I stand. But hey, $5. Oh well, it was only $5. But I don't know.
No one cares.
No one cares is right. All I care about is seeing this Eagles team thrive in this game. And I think they'll get the job done. As the week, I've got more optimistic. I don't know. I don't know if it's because the weekend's getting close. I don't know what it is. The game's getting closer. Usually Monday, case of the Mondays or whatever. But no, you know what? Thursday's coming along for, another weekend. And this one will feature the Philadelphia Eagles in playoff action. That's a good thing to say. But whether or not they get it done remains to be seen. And ultimately, this Super Bowl pipe dream that I think died when Carson Wentz went down, we'll see. Stranger things have happened, I guess, but I'm not expecting strange things to get the Eagles to the Super Bowl this year. But all I can say, they might win this game. I'm starting to feel it. And if they win it, they're in the NFC Championship game. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that about the Philadelphia Eagles. And maybe they don't win the NFC Championship game if that's the case, but you know what? They have to step away from the Super Bowl. That's exciting. That's exciting. Thanks for tuning everybody to the Tyler Werner Show. And I guess all we can really say at this point is go Eagles. We'll talk to you next time on the Tyler Werner Show.